Are we squint? I don't know if we're squint. Nah, let's go with it. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I thought I would hop on here and do a little evaluation on my first year studying Spanish and French at Stirling University. I know it's a little bit after my first year finished, but I thought it would be quite a useful video for anybody deciding to study Spanish and French at Stirling. So without further ado, let's go with the intro. Okay, so a little bit of background. I study Spanish and French at Stirling University, in case that isn't obvious. In the Scottish system, you have to do 3 modules for the first 2 years. So therefore I do Spanish, French, and I got to choose an elective for the first 2 years of my degree, which counts towards 20 credits, which will basically combine to give you the credits for your exam and for your overall degree. So basically it's just a compulsory elective, and it just kind of adds a little bit more strings to your bow. So the first semester I did education, the second semester I did post-war European cinema, and then my third semester I have done psychology, and fourth semester I will be doing psychology as well. So that's just a little bit of background as to the system. It's getting hot in here, so I'm going to strip off one of my hoodies. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about just Spanish, and I'll leave a time down here when I start talking about French for anybody who's not here for French or for anybody who's here for just Spanish. So we'll talk about Spanish first and then we'll move on to French. But overall, combining the two has been super easy. It's been really effective for my language learning skills. And I've always thought that French was my weaker language, but I've actually found it very easy to combine the two, and I've actually not got mixed up whatsoever. At A-level, I really struggled with both languages. I think because I had the same teacher for both French and Spanish. At university, I've not struggled between the two. The only time I've struggled is when it's like a really similar word and I've been really tired or hungry. I'm really not me when I'm hungry. Okay, so let's talk about Spanish. So the first module of Spanish, so the first semester, we generally studied Latin America. So we studied Cuba, we studied Mexico, and Peru, and through this we did some what? Can't even speak English and I'm doing a video in Spanish and French. Through this we did the film Havana Blues, which was not the best film, I'm not going to lie. We looked into Frida Kahlo's paintings, and we also looked into the photographs of Martin Chamby. So that was the cultural side of it. And overall it was weighted 60% language, 40% culture. So the culture side of it, for the assessment, we had to do a collaborative task. Can't remember what the collaborative task was, it might come to me. And then the second assignment was a in-class essay, which was, both of those were worth 20%, so to add to the 40%. The language side, the language was super basic. It was kind of allowing people who've had a gap year or had only done hires and stuff like that to kind of recap on stuff. We didn't even look into anything complex, so we didn't even look into stuff like the subjunctive. It was very, very basic in the first semester. And we had 2 language tests which were in class, which were both worth 15%, and then we had a final in-class test which was worth 20%. So that makes your whole 100%, and we didn't have exams that semester. And yeah, do you know, I loved it, absolutely loved it. My only problem with it was that we looked into, for me, I thought we looked into too many different countries in one go. So we only spent like 3 weeks on each, 2 weeks on each. And for me, I'd rather go into more depth than just brushing over stuff quickly. I also wasn't a fan of the cultural representations that we used. So I wasn't a fan of the film and I wasn't a fan of the photographs. The only thing I was a fan of was Frida Kahlo. I think she's a legend, but I am not a massive art fan. So personally, I did kind of struggle for that semester. Okay, so moving on to semester 2. This was again very Latin American. I think the first year they kind of wanted to make it obvious that... Why is the place creaking? Okay, now we've got horns going. What? So I think they wanted to make it obvious that our degree wasn't just Spain, and by throwing us in with just Latin America, I think it was a very good way to allow us to realise that Spain wasn't just Spanish, and Latin American studies wasn't just Spanish, it's Latin American as well. So through this we studied Mexico, Peru and Argentina this time instead of Chile, and we used 3 different cultural representations. We used the film Cronos by Guillermo del Toro, which to me was a really freaky DVD. Our course coordinator for that one does like horror movies, and her dissertation, her postgrad is in something to do with horror literature. So that explained why we did that. But to other people, they found that it was very easy to analyse, and that, to be fair, there was a lot of links to the history at that time. And then through Peru, we analysed the film La Teta es Asustada, a very strange film again, but very good at cultural representation, and it gave us a lot to analyse. Personally, again, not my favourite film, but it was good for analysis, and I will give them that. And then in relation to Argentina, we looked at the whole rock nacional movement. So how music was portraying the dictatorship in Argentina and portrayed a lot of political issues, which was very interesting. And we also read a short story from Las Cosas que Perdimos en el Fuego, which is an incredible book. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a whole load of short stories. I absolutely loved that bit of literature, and the fact that it was a short story as well was really good. But in general, again, it was weighted 60% language, 40% culture. The language, again, fairly simple, but a little bit more complex, kind of starting to look into subjunctive, but only the basic forms of the subjunctive. It was weighted. We had 2 in-class language tests of 15%. We had an oral exam, which was worth 10%, and you were worth in partners, and you had to comment on a picture which was related to a certain topic, which for me was super easy. I feel really confident about talking in Spanish, and to be honest, I can do it on the spot. And then we also had a language exam. So we actually had exams this time, and the exam was worth 20%. Cultural, we had a collaborative task. So we made a video review of the film in Spanish, which was so fun. Obviously, I love video editing, so this was totally my jam. I love the fact that they're kind of keeping up with the times and not just being like, oh, write a book review, or oh, write a film review, but instead it was like a film and a video, which was really interesting. Then we also had a culture in-class essay again. They tend to love their in-class essays because it is the best way of understanding whether or not you've understood the cultural representations and whether or not you can analyse the culture that's represented through film and literature. So that was Spanish. So now I will start talking about French. Okay, so in French we started generally looking into the French Revolution, politics, education, all sorts of general just French history to do with French Revolution. So we looked into a book and a film, Entre les murs and Je voudrais que quelqu'un m'attend quelque part, which to my recollection was a short story book. And do you know, there was a lot of good books, the good short stories in that book, and I actually really enjoyed it. Entre les Murs was a really weird film, but it was really good at representing the education system in France and how it functions. Okay, so much like Spanish, French, has the lighting changed in here? I feel like it's gone a little bit darker, but we'll go with it. French was weighted 60% language, 40% culture, and the language tests, the language skills were fairly basic again. We started off basically just doing present tense, conditional, future, perfect, and to be fair, it was really good for me to revise those, even though I'm fairly confident in them. So it was very basic, and you can just start from scratch again, even if you have not studied French in ages. So don't be put off by the fact if you've had like a gap year or you've moved on to do something and you thought, oh, actually I want to go back and do French. Just do it. Like, it's so good, and the tutors here at Stirling are amazing. Jean-Michel, who is generally language coordinator, he is so good at explaining grammar, and he's always happy to help, and they have office hours that you can go and ask for help, and they are genuinely such friendly people here at the University of Stirling. Same for the Spanish department, honestly, they will help you with anything. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So assessment for language was weighted 2 grammar exercise tests, which are basically the same as what you do in class, but you have to do them in a test. So it tests your knowledge of the grammar, and then they were both worth 25% each. And then there was an oral exam focusing on oral and pronunciation work. So basically we read out of the book by Gavalda, and you basically read a passage from the book, and they tested your pronunciation, your understanding, and then there was a couple of questions at the end about words and what they meant. And then for culture, we had to do an essay in English on the film, and then we had to do a commentaire. It's called a commentaire de texte. So basically it's like a commentary, but they ask you 3 questions, and it's almost like a comprehension course reading kind of thing, and both of those were worth 20%. Now for me, I really struggled with writing an essay in English. Obviously for A-level I had to write it in French and Spanish, so to then go from that to have to relearn how to write an essay in English, I really struggled with. And for me, I think there should have been the option to do it in both, and I did ask and they wouldn't let me do it in both, but I'm sure that they had their reasons, and also a lot of people are just doing it as a module, and it's kind of throwing people in at the deep end to write an essay in French. So on a whole, I loved that module because it kind of went into detail about the political system, and it was so interesting to just discuss all of that and go into depth about the French Revolution and stuff like that, and the politics and the constitution and everything. So I loved that module. Second semester, yeah, it was more recent, like early 19th century French history, and we did quite a lot of literature, and we went into quite a lot of text, which was really good. But I would, again, much like the Spanish, I would have preferred to go into more depth about just one, and rather than just brushing over it. So we did the Guy de Maupassant book, Boule de Suif, which was a really good book. I loved that book. And then we also looked into Le Mulâtre by Victor Séjour. And then we looked at the comic, or graphic novel, I should say, Putain de Guerre, which for me was really difficult. I've never read a comic in my life. To go from reading books to a graphic novel I found really hard, and I've never been one for analysing art, so to combine that with literature, which I struggle with anyway, was just an absolute mind blow for me. But again, some people will like that, and I think it's good that they give a variety of different things. And then we also did the film Un long dimanche de fiançailles. So again, a lot of cultural representations, which is good because not everybody understands literature, not everybody understands film, not everybody understands graphic novels. So I think that it is good that they give you that option. Again, assessment wise, it was weighted 60% language, 40% culture. And much like the first semester, the language was assessed as 2 in-class tests and an oral exam, which was an actual test where you were to read a passage which you'd never seen before, and then you were asked questions of what it meant. So it was a little bit more involved, and then there was a little discussion afterwards. It was a little bit more involved than the first semester rather than just reading a bit of book. Whereas the culture side was assessed with just 2 essays that were written in English. So yeah, overall I loved first year. To me it was very easy though. Coming from an English school, that is the one thing I would say, but I do think it has its benefits. I would say that it is a good way to start off your university experience with it slightly easier rather than just throwing you in at the deep end. And I hope that this video is really helpful for anybody wanting to study French and Spanish and considering it. I will do a video on my 3rd semester, so my first half of year 2, for anybody who's interested, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please feel free to comment below if you have any questions. I will try and answer them all. Also, my Instagram is here. Please feel free to follow me, and I generally post a lot about university life on my channel. So again, give this video a thumbs up if it was really helpful for you, and if you enjoyed it, click the subscribe button to follow my university journey, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys, I love you lots, and have an amazing time learning languages. That was the most nerdy thing I said, but anyway, bye!